We were seeing earlier, and now it's in my head, and I can't get it out. It's a bit of an earworm.
Well, it's because you bought a farm. Old MacDonald.
Old
Bruce Martin bought a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on this farm he had a donkey.
No, we don't say ass. We say
donkey is 2 syllables. You need the single syllable. On this farm he had a ass. An ass. Well, we want to make sure we say it right.
We do want to make yes, it's important that we say that correctly. But as I think I clarified last time, we don't own the mule. It is owned by the next door neighbor. So I'm not sure ownership on the 50-pound coyote. That's kind of a 50-50 now.
I'm not sure you want to own the coyote.
So you know how I spend my evenings these days, Raj?
I'd love to know. Bruce?
I'm looking at tractors. Constantly looking at tractors.
Now I'm starting to look for tractors.
Good.
Because old MacDonald had a tractor.
Yeah, he had a tractor and he rode that tractor. And when you have 47 acres, of which about 30 are clear, there's a lot of tractoring that has to be done. As Grandpa would say, I'm going to put you on the mowing machine. The mowing machine was actually the most dangerous thing that I've ever been associated with. It was like a razor blade scythe that was 6 feet tall, maybe 8 feet tall. It's hard to say when you're that young. And then you would drop that baby down and everything to the right of the tractor within an 8-foot thing would just get cut down.
Well, and it worked like
these little razors going back and forth in there.
It worked like hair clippers, because hair clippers cut.
They catch it
by going back and forth.
Right.
So they go. So you have the one fixed, and then you have the blade that goes back and forth, and that's what cuts your hair. Well, this would lay down, and so you had that. You really didn't want to get caught in that thing.
No, and you had to be real careful about rocks and roots and whatnot, because they could catch it and sling it back. Anyway, it was tractoring. But now there's bush hogging, but there's so much to bush. So you have bush hogging, which is taking large pieces and it didn't cut 1-inch trees down. But then you have a finish mower, which is a secondary thing that you attach, and then that's more of a mowing thing. It's a finer cut if you're trying to get real, like when we're creating the green, because we're going to create a green below where the building on the front is. There's a tee box just to the left. 170 feet below you will be the green. Zach and I were talking about this.
Oh, I already saw that in my mind.
We're going to lose a lot of golf balls there.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome.
No, I was thinking the exact same. I was thinking, oh yeah, you have to have a bluff tee. You have to have
it's just part of it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the Pastords do, which saves a lot of money, is we play golf in neighborhoods. Last week, 2 weeks ago now, I guess, we played project golf. So in the green space that was formerly the projects and the Oscar Mason Center, Sparkman Homes and all that's been torn down. A lot of green space. We played 18 holes of sort of pitch and putt mini golf. And instead of having a hole that you're trying to get the ball into, you had to hit a pole or the trunk of a tree, the bottom of a sign, a trash can, a gas can.
Bruce's Jeep.
At one point, we thought about you had to chip it into a shopping cart that was right there on the property. It was actually great fun. Who won that day? I can't even remember.
Oh, stop it.
Good job. Hey, do you know the Masters is this weekend?
I hear, and the conversation seems to be about, is Tiger going to actually play?
He said is he
going to play?
He said he was.
All right.
Looked it up this morning.
Is he going to win?
It's a Tom Brady question.
Right.
It really is. So 43 with more injuries than
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
What I'm saying is there's where the parallel ends.
He won the Masters. And I'm like, so he's 43, which is old enough. And injuries all over the place, back injuries and fractures and all that kind of stuff. Now he's going to play with largely a metal right leg. When you read about the surgeries and what they did and what they had to do to even repair it,
Right. The idea that he is
That
would
he's ever
even
going to play golf again.
play anything remotely like competitive golf.
Because you have to
Other
walk.
something other north of putt-putt.
You're having to walk that
Right.
course, which is a hilly. I've
You
been
have to
there. I was
walk.
there in 2011, the Masters, Augusta National. I mean, it's uphill, downhill. I mean, dramatic. You can't even really tell it on TV.
On TV, is it
But you
more?
have these 150-foot drops. You know, you're up here, way down here, like number 6, that little par 3. Well, she's way up there. You can't even see the people when you're down at the green. You hardly even see the people.
Really?
You can't see them because they're back over the hill.
Wow.
So you're just watching the ball come in. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
But to walk 18 out there is going to be a lot of physical exertion.
Yeah.
And then you're having to hit shots in between. Anyway, it's just going to be interesting.
You know,
yeah.
One thing I'm pretty sure Old MacDonald did not have on his farm.
A side-by-side?
A tattoo.
I don't know what relevance that has to anything.
All right. It's Roger's segue into a fascinating.
That was a great segue. Yeah, I'm betting Old MacDonald did not. Well, he might have if he had been in, I don't know, Vietnam.
Well, here's the thing. Like, we're talking about old. I mean, I'm talking generationally. The older you are, the less likely you are to have a tattoo.
Unless it was something you got, in the Army during the war.
Okay. A very common occurrence.
I'm just saying, the USMC or something.
So I saw a story
I love Mom
on a guy who has the most tattoos in the person with the most tattoos in the world, at least in the which I think you'd probably.
Are you unbuttoning? Did you get a chest tattoo?
Here's my tattoo.
Because if you did, I don't want to see it. And I'm fairly sure the two people watching don't want to see it.
So read a story, a guy in South America, he might be upper 20s. I'm not, not what I consider old. So he has, guess how many tattoos he has on his body?
1,000.
It's, I think, over 1,500. He has tattoos. What percentage of his body is covered with tattoos, would you say? Just what would you guess? Give me a guess, Bruce. I like to put you on the spot here. What percentage of his entire entire body?
I know where you're going with this. I'm guessing 98% coverage.
That's exactly the number.
Is it really?
It is. 98%.
Don't make me guess what 2% is.
No.
Don't want to know.
No. Here's the thing. I'll finish up with this.
2% is not where you think that 2% is.
No. So the article also went on to talk about places that are tattooed, and 2 of them just seem to be like off limits. So like, what would you consider? I mean, in all of your thinking about getting a tattoo, like, what are the 2 off limit places for you?
The private parts, as Paul delicately put it in his letter. We have certain parts that are more private.
No, what he said, he called them
that are less.
Oh, what's the word?
That are less
presentable.
Less presentable parts. So we cover
the
them.
Parts we don't present.
We treat them with special modesty. What he was saying,
we're not going to be presenting those parts.
Nope. And we're sure not, hopefully, going to be tattooing those parts.
So,
but I'm sure I'm wrong.
So, while it did not go into detail about every single place, 2 places it mentioned that seemed off limits to me: gums and eyes.
Like the eyeball?
Eyeball.
That's not even skin. I mean, the eyelid, I've seen people with tattoos there. That seems like that would be painful.
Yeah.
I mean,
98. So he's considered, gums tattooed.
Yeah. Never.
Yeah.
That also.
Okay. It just seems excessive.
Here's a question for our listeners. So, Roger, do you have any tattoos?
I do not have tattoos. Do you have a tattoo?
No, I don't. So Zach and I for years were talking about getting a tattoo together, and then he ran off and got a bunch without me. So I just felt left out and never really pursued it after that.
I will say this. Now, I mean, I've thought about it multiple times,
Sure.
and when you thought about a tattoo, have you thought about what you might do?
Yeah, there's a verse, and I think I can't remember where it is in Isaiah or something, but it was a cool verse. When I saw it, I'm like, that'd be a great tattoo. It says, "I am the Lord's, and He is mine."
Mm.
It's just a great verse.
Right.
It's just a reminder that this life is not my own.
Yep.
I've been bought with a price. That reality of, in other words, if I'm going to mark, if I'm going to identify my body in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good reminder that I'm His and He is mine. Which that takes me even back to Revelation, where they will be my people and I will be their God, and the whole new realm. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's the only one I've seriously considered. That and I love Mom. In case Mom's listening, with a big heart.
I'm not sure that would feel like love to Mom.
Can you imagine when I showed up at Christmas and say, "Hey, Mom, check this
Look
out. Love you. And watch what happens when I do this."
Now, here's the definition of mixed feelings.
Yeah. Well, thank you, son.
Can you wipe that? I mean,
that's it, Roger. I'm going to get one of those henna tattoos this year with the "I love Mom" and on one side and "I love Marlena" on the other arm.
Just see Mom's face. No, and
I know what Dad would say. You know what Dad would say? What about me? Because Dad's just got this great sense of humor. He would be definitely, what about me? Where's Dad?
I've thought if I got one, yeah, it would be something related, or joy. That it would be something.
Joy as in your wife, or joy as in exuberant happiness?
Joy as in my wife.
Okay.
Although it's a nice play on words.
Sure.
Something that in my mind would match the permanence of.
Well, and of course now there's an entire industry in tattoo erasure.
Yes. Which our 98% friend.
I don't know what you'd have to do to get that.
How long would it take?
I think it would take
to erase
like third-degree burns is probably the only way at that point you're going to be able to get rid of that many tattoos.
The other fascinating thing around tattoos,
good segue, once again,
is it's a fascinating, the response to tattoos in the Christian community is a fascinating kind of conversation to me, because to me, in other words, it's something that seems to evoke some fairly strong emotions, or at least where I've, and I guess it's just that it's this reminder on a couple of fronts of where likes and dislikes can actually drive a sense of right and wrong sometimes, where we are actually, because I think I've seen people pull some, I'll be careful with that. They'll point to some isolated Old Testament verse.
There is one about not having tattoo markings, piercings on your body,
and pull that out when I will look at, first of all, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Old Testament verses we don't pull out at all.
No, because right next to that is don't wear clothing made of two different materials. So all you wearing 50-50 cotton and polyester, that's a problem.
Right. That is so. So where, and then I also think it's just comical to me. It's just perspective. So we might look, or there's a reaction to, well, certainly, yeah, you wouldn't color yourself that way, but we don't think one moment about every morning putting some kind of coloring on your face, coloring on your cheeks, coloring on your lips, coloring on above your eyes, coloring your nails, your toenails, your fingernails.
Give something for the guys that they can relate to.
Well, not saying that they're guys that, where I'm getting at is, it's just funny. It's comical to me when I look at just human experience. We don't realize, again, how many things are culturally conditioned.
Right.
Where we grew up in a context where we saw people coloring certain parts of their body.
Sure.
And again, how much that just drives our sense of, well, that's normal. That's okay. But it's abnormal. This is where we're, my gosh, well, that's to paint something on your skin. Well, that's to color your skin. That's abnormal.
Well, and not just abnormal, but wrong.
Well,
so,
right.
And again, back
in
the, go ahead.
Well, that's what often drives our sense of wrong. Then we look at what's normal, and then if it's not normal, well, then it's not normal to our experience. Well, then we moralize it. Yeah.
Right. And I remember one of the unfortunate metaphors that an evangelist used back in the day when I was a teenager. Well, and he was talking about makeup. Should women wear makeup? Because, Peter talks about women not adorning themselves and not letting their beauty become, from outer beauty and all that. And he just said, well, I just believe if an old barn needs some paint, you ought to paint it. And now
I think he was quoting Bob Jones Sr.
Okay. Now that I'm married, I'm realizing bad metaphor. Just, can you,
we keep coming back to the farm.
The old barn.
I love it.
The old barn on this one needs a little paint.
It does.
We're going to do some painting on that barn. I don't know if we're going to paint it red.
If the barn needs painting.
If the old barn needs some painting, you ought to paint it. And I just thought, well, what's his wife thinking out there? That's me, the old barn here. Painting the old barn right
just
here.
Love it when he uses that story. His nickname for me is the barn.
So speaking of awards,
that's almost.
This is going to be
almost as bad.
This is going to be our anti-segue.
Wait. No, you're going to the Oscars. Come on, this is a segue to the Oscars.
No, I happened to listen to your Facecast this morning.
Oh no,
which I thought was quite good, by the way. But
most of them are stellar. Really,
they really are.
What I think
that's true. I agree. I don't know why you always look so much bigger than me. I just look tiny next to you. I'm going to sit up closer so I can be bigger than Robert.
Well, we're not going to compare our weights,
So I realized, I was listening, of course, everyone's been talking about the Oscars, and what you said was so true. No one's talking as much about who won something or didn't win something. They're talking about right or wrong, Will Smith,
right.
Chris Rock. A couple of things from that, even as I was listening to your Facecast that I thought was really good, was the way people are approaching even Chris Rock, what he should have done or shouldn't have done.
Right.
But in one sense, I think he just lit out the teaching of Christ. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. In other words, he was like, I'm not going to press charges.
Yeah,
I'm not going to sue.
He was adamant.
$200 million. And I'm like, bully for him. Because that is the way of Christ. In other words, if you're going to argue, if we argue at any level, violence begets violence, then you could have had a brawl on stage.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, if you're going to slap me, I'll slap you. And then there's this whole thing. But the reason I want to talk about awards was not that. We live in a world where it's actually a little bit backwards in terms of how Jesus would teach this whole thing of awards. So I want to talk a little bit about the second coming, because your other Facecast this week that was so good was even talking about judgment.
Yes.
And that there is an afterlife and there is an account. There's a giving an account. And I've thought a lot about that because I'm reading in Luke, I think 14 right now, where Jesus talks a little bit about this. And he talks about being ready. He said, because when the master returns, he's going to come at a moment you don't know. He even uses the thief in the night analogy. If the strong man knew when his house was going to be broken into, he would have been awake and ready and would not have let it happen. But he's talking about, hey, when this return happens, you need to be dressed and ready. You need to be. So he's alluding to this, the second coming, and then the accounting that happens after that. So in our world, an award ceremony, the award is a prize you get at the end of doing something good. So you get this award, but the way that Jesus taught, it's award is on the front end. Here's what I mean.
Okay.
And I've talked about this before, but it's on my brain because I'm doing this talk tomorrow night for the Huntsville Intercity Learning Center fundraising dinner.
So you're practicing right now.
That's practicing right now.
Okay.
But I'm fascinated because the words award, steward, and reward all have the same root, which is ward.
Yep.
Ward is to entrust person or property to another person's care or custody. Okay. So when Jesus tells the story of the minas, there's 10 minas, everybody gets one. And of course, for me, I break that out into, all right, if I take this as illustration. Everybody gets a life.
Mm-hmm.
We literally, in the old soap opera terms, have one life to live. And we've all been awarded a life. In other words, God has placed in our care and custody a life. It's an award. It's a little, even the government contracting world that we live in. On the front end of a deal, you're awarded the contract.
Right.
Then during the length of that contract, you have to steward that contract.
Right.
If you do it well, guess what? You might be rewarded with another contract. So the idea being, we've all been awarded a life, and Jesus wants us to put this life to work. He wants us to invest this life.
Yeah. So I'm going to break in just super fast.
No, that's fine.
No, because I'll say this to help people think about this idea that I tell people, your life is not a gift from God.
This is good.
Your life actually is a trust.
It's an entrustment. Yeah.
It's an award. I love where you're going. It's a stewardship.
Mm-hmm.
A gift. Someone gives me a gift. I'm not accountable to them for how I use their gift.
I might resell it.
I might resell it. I can do whatever. It's a gift. But our lives, in that sense, are not a gift.
That's a great word.
They are a stewardship, and so God actually we belong to Him.
Something has been entrusted to us and put in our care and custody.
Right. It's precious. It's valuable, but we are responsible then. This is where you start getting in. I love that, again, where you're awarded a contract, but you're awarded a contract. There are guidelines. That contract has stipulations. It has.
This would represent good stewardship of the contract. Right. This would represent a breach of contract.
Here's what you're expected. It's a statement of expectations.
Right.
Or even what we're agreeing to. This is right.
And there's a word. No, in the contract world, there's a word for that. It's the specifications. It's the expectations. It's the whatever it is. Okay. Someone out there knows what it is. But whatever it is, there are expectations that with this contract that's been awarded, you're going to carry it out in a certain way. So this is where it comes back to this, the second coming and the giving of an account. When I was growing up, I always saw the judgment as this very dreadful thing.
Yes.
That I was dreading, and oh my gosh, my entire life is going to be put on the big thing.
And the stern God. So God's there, and He's in His black robe. I'm just saying the kind of imagery is, again, courtroom, very serious. This is, and you're being tried. And that was the singular image that I tended to have in my mind.
Yeah. So, but if we're taking this life that we've been awarded and we're stewarding it well, the judgment, the accounting should actually be something we're looking forward to. I think about in our culture, to get invited to the Oscars or the Grammys, just to get invited creates such a sense of anticipation. Now, I've thought through this because I'm crazy. I'm like, what would I wear? I mean, I know that would never cross your mind, but it's that whole thing. It's that whole thing of, this is a big deal. We're going to be at this award ceremony. Now, and I try to help believers, followers of Jesus, instead of saying this is this dreadful thing where, what if it's something that we're looking forward to? In other words, I'm stewarding my life well. Again, I don't believe I'm stewarding it perfectly by any means. Right. And it takes grace every day. But even you're listening, you're talking this whole thing of the reality that Jesus said, we'll give an account. I'm like, man, I want to live this life well. And it got me to thinking again, what is your best life now? Your best life now is really living for your best life later. In other words, everything we do now is looking toward something that's happening later. And the reward is not a goblet or even we talk the crowns of righteousness, that whether that's literal or not, it's a rewarding, which means to again, ward, greater entrustment. Jesus says, if you've been good with a few things, I can entrust you with all of my possessions. I can trust you with possessions of your own. If you've been trustworthy with my property, that's it, with another person's property, his property, then you can be entrusted with property of your own. It's this thing of, in this world, in this age, in this realm, we don't own anything. It's what you said about our life. Our life isn't even a gift.
Yeah.
It's an entrustment. It's been awarded to us. with the understanding that we will steward it,
Yeah.
so that we will then be rewarded and in the next realm. And the reward is more responsibility.
Yeah.
Even when Peter asked that question, it's an interesting question. We've left everything to follow you. What then will there be for us? Jesus doesn't point so much to what's going on in this age. He does allude to that. But he says, but in the next realm, you'll be on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. In other words, there's responsibility that comes in the next realm. If we steward our award now, well, we're rewarded with greater responsibility. So it just made me think, I really, because of the grace of God in my life,
Right.
I'm looking forward to that day, not dreading it.
Well, I was thinking of this analogy while you were talking.
Okay.
Because if you think about the judgment, it's an assessment, it's an evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just common biblical language. God's going to, at the end,
right,
God's going to give an assessment of your trust, how you've done, what you've done with your trust. And really what you said, though, is eye-opening to me, because I'm very cognizant.
I said something eye-opening.
I'm very cognizant or tuned in of where I fall short.
Yes.
And sometimes that's all I'm tuned in, but it hit me. An examination, a test in a classroom. That's an evaluation of how much you've learned, where you've gotten to a certain point. And I realized sometimes I was looking forward to getting my grade, and sometimes I wasn't.
Isn't that it? Yeah. Sometimes you were looking forward to those report cards coming out because you're like, I know I killed it. I know.
Because I stewarded.
Yes.
Because I did study.
Yes.
Because I did pay more attention. A bit more than usual.
Instead of shooting spitballs at the chalkboard.
Or passing notes to that girl over there.
I like you. Do you like me? Yes or no? Circle one. We've all done it. Don't say you didn't. You know
I've gotten an awful lot of.
No. Get away from me.
I've seen a lot of those notes just read and wadded up.
They didn't have the guts
It didn't even come back.
They didn't have the guts to say.
No, they threw it back at me.
And please stop asking. So, I was like, so how can I look forward to that? Because I know I've sinned. I know I still mess up.
Yeah.
And Jesus talks about giving an account for even careless words that you've spoken. I realize it's because of what I believe about forgiveness. In other words, when I confess that sin, that mess up, that it's forgiven, it's released. It is unbelievably like it never happened. In other words, so when I think of the judgment, I think of it as an award ceremony that we're being invited to. And guess what? My sins aren't going to be displayed on a big screen. You know why? Because I've confessed them and Christ forgave them.
Yeah.
But in a beautiful, crazy, the generosity of God, it's not just the mercy, this mercy and grace, not just the mercy that I'm not giving an account for all of my sins because Jesus paid the price for that. He's going to reward me for the things I did right, good. And I'm like, that's just crazy.
No, it's the magnanimity of God. And I've talked about it before, but again, it hits me with this force of what you're talking about. I can't leave this too fast of for me, the greatest reward, hands down, is the literal wording that Jesus used. Well done.
Oh, yeah.
Now, think about that. It's not wrong to be excited about a well done. In other words, this is what it's getting at is for all my brokenness and for all the things I screw up. In other words, God's well done is not for perfect people.
No.
But the well done is, in that context, that parable, is the stewardship you had. You did something with it. And you get a well done. Where God says, good job. And it's not, I just realized as I'm sitting here thinking, it's maybe too much what I thought it was. I just don't want to hear foolish servant, that you've done. But actually, when you look even at that parable, of the three, two of them get well done.
Yeah.
2 of the 3.
Yeah.
So this is not this graciousness of God that for all my brokenness, whatever, certainly the best stewardship of my life is acknowledging who I belong to,
Right.
acknowledging where I've
My
gone
life is
south.
not my own. Yes.
My life is not my own. Trusting his grace that
Yes.
he offers, but then also trusting that he can do good through me, that I can actually. So it's not audacious to be possibly even expecting a well done. Not big, and we know the only reason I've ever done anything good or noble or any good stewardship, I know it traces back to God, but it is not wrong to look forward to the judging, the day of judging, the day of assessing, because God's going to assess the stewardship.
And here's the thing, and I just thought of this as you said it. I never thought of it. He said, well done. You did something.
Yes.
He didn't say well intentioned, well thought out.
Right.
No, it really was, because I with lots of good intentions.
Right.
Or, I tell you, I have great thoughts every day. I don't necessarily move on them, but he said, well done. In other words, it matters that you did something. And so part of my life calling, as I've been really honing it down, because I'm working with a group right now out of Nashville to help me sort of hone down my sort of what Bruce does, because I do so many things.
Yeah.
From leading backpacking trips to speaking to writing to counseling, coaching. They're helping me sort of combine that into how do you say that so the average person that doesn't know Bruce Martin would understand what he's about. And I realize I'm about this life investment. In other words, it's an interesting question. They talk about what's the problem you solve. And I'm like, what's the problem I solve? So as I thought about it more and more, in other words, in my realm, this is sort of my entrustment, if I understand it correctly, I'm addressing the problem of meaninglessness or futility. In other words, if I believe that life has no meaning, or my life doesn't have any meaning, I can do whatever I want or not what I want, or it can lead a person to either license on one side, I'll live extravagant, live for myself, whatever I want to do, or I'll end my life because my life it's futile. It doesn't matter what I do or don't do. I'm like, my job, it's even why the word hope is in so much of the stuff that I speak on. I'm helping people find meaning even in suffering. I'm helping them finding purpose even in pain, which is a word that those words are used a lot.
Yeah.
But it's really been good. The process has really been good for me because I'm responsible for what's been entrusted to me. So if you take the parable of the talents, everyone has a different. Everyone get the parable of the minas. Everyone gets one life. You're all awarded one life. But at the parable of the talents, he expands on it a little bit. And I realize we have to be careful how much we theologize that. But you've all got some gifts that are different. So you have gifts that are different than mine, and I have gifts that are different than others. I'm not responsible for stewarding anyone else's gifts or giftedness,
and
which is super freeing.
And then I don't have to compare.
Nope.
Even this whole thing, really ultimately, but I've done it. The foolishness of, well, I don't have that person's gifts. I could never do what they do. Well, duh. I mean, actually, that's actually look at the parable. So when God distributes, there's not this necessarily this equal. Well, it's true. Some people have more abilities. They have more skills. They have more influence. They have more.
And here's the sobering side to that. In both of those passages and both those parables, and what I was reading again this morning, Jesus said, "So to whoever's been entrusted much, even much more will be expected." Right. In other words, the person that had 5 talents, well, of course, he could create or generate 10 talents, where the person with 2 couldn't. But he took his 2 and made 4. And when you look at the parable of the minas, you got one guy that's killing it. He takes 1 mina and invests it well, and he ends up with 10 minas. But the person who had 1 and only made it 5 still got the well done.
Right.
And then a great reward after that, which was you take charge of 5 of these.
But listen to what you were saying. Back to what
I was.
Well done.
Done.
The key, even with that, was you did something with what I gave you in the way that I asked you to.
Yeah.
Because this is not just you did it. I asked you to do something with what I get, and you followed my lead. Again, we've talked about it before, but the worst thing is to simply, you're the one who gave us our life. is why I think the fundamentals, the first and fundamental stewardship is actually acknowledging he is the king. I'm not my own. I belong to him.
Yes.
He makes the calls. He has the right to hold me accountable. Because the idea of an accounting at the end of the day is a sign that I'm responsible.
And someone else is in charge.
Someone else is in charge.
That's not me.
Ain't me. And as long as I'm living in charge, I'll decide whether I'm going to do what the king wants or not. I'll decide whether I'm going to use my abilities. I'll decide whether this life is his or mine.
And in both stories, the parable of the talents, parable of the minas, the only way to go wrong is to do nothing, hide it or put it on a shelf in a piece of cloth. In other words, this person treasured it. They saw life as a gift. That's such a great thing. It's a gift. We're going to treasure it over here. It's just wonderful. The other person just buried it. That might be the person that didn't think his life was important. You see what I'm saying? There's two different ways to approach that.
Yeah.
But this beautiful thing of, as you were talking about the Oscars and the Grammys coming up, I'm like, I'm looking forward to, I'm probably never going to get invited to any of those.
Right.
But we're all going to get invited to the great ceremony. And so when I teach believers about this, I'm like, don't make that a day that you're dreading. Don't think of it. Because I think as a child, judgment was attached. The second coming was attached to the judgment of God in terms of the negative component of that.
Right.
And there is a consequence to not living this life as a stewardship that's been entrusted to me by God.
Right.
But I realize a couple things. One, I can always steward better. I mean, so I'm always looking at that. That's not a bad thing. I live in this tension. How much of my life am I living, for myself, and how much of my life am I really living for God? And I realize that you got to buy a tractor. Which, did you know those suckers are expensive?
And we haven't even gotten to the pull behinds.
Well, that can't be good. But that's okay.
All right.
We're just going to continue on like that never happened. So at one point in this, when Jesus is telling everyone, he's telling the crowd, Jesus, are you saying this to us, the 12, the apostles?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you telling this to everyone? Now, the apostles, he had already appointed them as apostles, which means messenger. In other words, they were specially designated by Jesus to tell, communicate.
A particular kind of person.
They were so others. I don't think are necessarily called to the same thing. Yep. I don't think my wife's called to the same communication messenger calling that God's given me. So you say food allotment to the servants at their proper time. It'll go really well for that person at the accounting when he does. But make sure that you don't think, man, it's Jesus a long time. It's been a long time, and they begin to press the very people that they're called to feed and care for. And that's where I want to keep stewarding. You and I both are in that second category of messenger, whether you believe in apostle or not. I very much believe that we're apostles, but we've been given a message. And even what you're doing 5 days a week, in the face cap, you're preaching the message of the kingdom of God. And I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I realized even, because the last 2 weekends I've been out on the trail with 4 people at a time. Beautiful to teach the way of Christ. I love teaching the way of Christ out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
It's just a different kind of environment, and people can press in. And in smaller people have a lot more freedom to us and ask questions. But I'm constantly looking at. I think all of us should be constantly looking at how am I stewarding right now in this season? I'm getting so excited about my 60s.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this thing we talked about several podcasts ago, potentially the most impactful time of your life is 60 to 70. That's exciting.
And where this comes from to me then is there's this other mistake. You talked about this mistake Christians can make. But the other mistake that goes another way is I don't need to worry about the judgment because my sins are covered.
My sins are covered.
Right. So that's all the judgment is about.
And that's all they're concerned about.
Right. In other words, just I have the righteousness of Jesus on my account. My sins have been covered. Has a judgment. Everyone will answer. There's a point once the judgment. Every one of us, sins or whatever, you're going to be accounting for your stewardship. And the image that Paul uses at one point is fire. Isn't this
Right.
fun?
Yeah.
So Bruce, if we think
Isn't this
about
fun? That's
No.
right. Isn't this fun?
well, so the image is okay, the stuff that was not a good stewardship
Yeah.
gets burned up.
Yep.
But then say the silver precious stones. I think now you think about this. I mean, if we're just okay, Raj, it's time for your testing. And I've got a visual I want to use here. Okay. So here's all the stuff you've done. Now, good. Your sins are covered. You have the righteousness.
Get the blowtorch.
Whatever. All right. So now, all the things you've done with your life. All right. I'm gonna get the angels. Yeah, come in with the
Napalm.
torch, and then you get to see what's left after the fire, what's standing. And I just think about this image of to even though have joy or the ability to look forward to. I know there's stuff based on what Jesus has said that's going to last the fire. That's going to.
Yes.
I know there are things that are going to burn up. I know there are things that.
Oh, because God judges thoughts and intents of the heart. In other words, why I did the good thing matters.
Right.
If I did, here's the thing: Jesus made it very clear. If I did good things so that I would be recognized by others, it burns up. Poof. It's in flash paper. Poof.
But wait.
It's funny. Other people might have thought, boy, that's going to be rewarding.
No, me. That was $10,000, guy. That was a lot. I gave. Did you?
But you played the trumpet before you gave it.
Why did you keep talking about
I'm giving
that?
$10,000 to help the poor. Well, that's as good as it gets for you, Raj. You remember that old song? This has got to be in the early 90s. That's all the lumber.
I loved that song.
That's all the lumber. That's all the lumber. That's all the lumber you sent. The idea being, you'll either have a mansion in the next realm, or you'll have this really small outhouse looking, lean-to. But it's a great song because
you didn't send enough
invest. Ahead.
Right. You didn't. Yes.
So what's sobering to me is I wonder if many Christians are doing what Jesus even talked about in the parable of the talents. It's an interesting course. And again, I realize we can't take the parable too far. But at one point, the person that buried his talent, he said, if you knew all of these things about me, you could have at least put it on deposit at the bank and earned, what can you get right now? 1%, maybe in savings, but 1%. The master's arguing 1% is better than nothing.
You did something.
You did. You at least gave it to the banker, so I have 1.2%.
Right.
When I got back. And again, it goes back to, we've talked about this many times, but the only way to go wrong is to do nothing. But it should also create this desire in us to I want to do more that lasts forever. Right. And I was thinking this morning about even and maybe there's a book with that title but outliving your life. Because when I was working with the strategist this week, I was thinking I'm trying to help people outlive their life. Right. I may have to use that tonight. That's so good.
Yeah.
It's an intro. There's the crystal goblet.
So this is where I think, even if I'm thinking today for the smile of, in other words, at the end, let's just think that all done.
Yeah.
But how am I carrying myself? How am I engaging?
I go to bed at night and I pray but I'm like today.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that has to do with, in my mind, I stewarded things well. I stewarded things well.
Right.
And I love that every day. This is the other thing I want people to know before we leave. It's never too late to start. If you're breathing, investing your life right now, you can begin stewarding your life well right now. It's where can we do that? Well, there's 100 million ways.
What a terrible reason not to do anything, because so many I didn't.
Because I squandered many years.
Right.
Many.
I make God smile, not